I never thought Green Hill Zone could feel oppressive. Growing up, I ran through those loops and hills so often that the bright colors and the rhythmic hum of the wind were comforting. Every morning felt like the same adventure. The wind brushing past me, the distant chirps of strange little animals, and the occasional sparkle of golden rings. But one morning everything felt wrong. It started with the air. There was no wind. The usual comfort of the sun hitting my quills was replaced by a chill that crept over me like ink. I chalked it up to a foggy day, but it wasn't fog. It was darker, heavier, as if the shadows themselves were breathing. I tried to shake it off and keep running, just following my usual path. At first everything seemed normal, the loops, the springs, the rings glinting in the light. But I noticed that the animals weren't acting like themselves. Rabbits froze mid-hop, their eyes hollow and wide. Badgers weren't digging, they just sat still, staring at me with these empty, calculating eyes. Even the birds, which normally sang cheerfully, were silent, perched unnaturally still, tilting their heads in ways that didn't feel right. My stomach churned. I slowed my pace, thinking maybe I had stayed out too late the night before and was just imagining things. Then I saw it. A flicker, almost like a glitch in the world. A ring hung in the air, spinning like it always did. But for a fraction of a second it looked jagged, like the pixels of reality were bending. I blinked and it was gone. My quills raised involuntarily. Something wasn't right, and I could feel it crawling under my skin. I ran, faster than I'd ever run, trying to convince myself it was nothing. But the world around me began to distort. Colors sharpened unnaturally, then dulled. Trees stretched taller, their shadows twisting like fingers reaching for me. I reached the loop that normally led to the familiar platform and jumped, but when I landed, the ground beneath me cracked. Not like dirt cracking. It was digital, jagged, like the world itself had a seam tearing apart. I stumbled back and saw movement in the corner of my eye. Shadows that shouldn't exist darted between the hills, shapes too fluid and wrong to be real. I froze. One of the shadowy figures emerged from behind a tree. A silhouette shaped like me, but its eyes were black holes, empty and sucking in light. It mimicked my movements perfectly but slower, like a corrupted recording of me. I ran. I didn't look back. Rings that I usually collected to keep me safe now seemed like traps. They flickered and vanished when I tried to grab them. The terrain changed under my feet, loops folding inward, hills stretching into impossible angles. It was no longer Green Hill. It was a twisted version of itself. Something made by someone who had warped the world for fun, or maybe something that had never been meant to exist. I came across an old, abandoned shack that I had never noticed before. The wood was warped and the door creaked open slowly as if inviting me inside. Against my better judgment, I stepped in. Inside, the air was thick, almost static. A screen flickered in the corner, showing grainy footage of me running through the hills. I could see myself, but I wasn't alone. Shadowy figures mirrored my movements behind me, always a step behind but always perfectly in sync. I turned, heart hammering, but no one was there. The shack suddenly felt enormous, the walls stretching impossibly, and the screen blinked off. A whisper filled the air. It wasn't a word I could understand, it was like static converted into voice, scratching against my eardrums. "Run," it seemed to say over and over. I wanted to scream, but my voice caught. When I ran back outside, I noticed the rings again. They were floating in clusters, forming a path that led somewhere I didn't want to go, yet instinctively I followed them. The path led me to a loop I had never seen before. As I approached, I noticed something chilling. There were hundreds of versions of me. Some were crouched, some running, some lying still, but all had the same empty black eyes. They didn't move. I felt my quills tremble. And then one of them moved. Slowly, deliberately, it stepped forward, and its mouth twisted into a grin that I didn't recognize on myself. The ground beneath me gave way. I fell into darkness. I landed hard, not on dirt or grass, but on a flat gray void. The air was thick, metallic. Shapes moved in the shadows. Figures that resembled me, or worse, me in different states of decay, glitching in and out of existence. I tried to run, but my legs moved like they were in slow motion. Then from the darkness I heard it, a voice. Familiar but wrong. It said my name. I froze. The void shifted, and suddenly I was back in Green Hill. The sun shone normally, the wind rustled gently, and the animals went about their business as if nothing had happened. My rings sparkled in the distance. It looked normal, Too normal. I felt a prickle at the back of my neck. The shadows in the trees didn't move, but they didn't look like shadows either. They were watching. I ran home that day, faster than ever, telling myself it was a dream, a glitch in my perception. But when I got back to my little house, I saw something that made me stop cold. On my living room wall was a new screen. Grainy footage of Green Hill, me running, and hundreds of shadowy figures mirroring every step. Then I realized the screen wasn't plugged in. It had never been there before. I haven't gone back to Green Hill since, but sometimes at night when I close my eyes I see those figures again, always just behind me, waiting. And I know they're still running. I never considered myself the type to get scared by old games. I grew up with a library of cartridges, some scratched, some barely touched, but nothing ever spooked me. That changed the day I found it. I was at a yard sale in some rundown neighborhood, sifting through boxes of dusty electronics. Among them was a cartridge with no label, just a faded gray casing. It was unremarkable, except that it had a faint warmth to it, almost like it was alive. I didn't know why, but I bought it. The man selling it smiled too widely, too fixed, and whispered, "Be careful." I laughed it off. Back home, I inserted it into my old console. The screen flickered, and instead of the usual title screen, I saw a dimly lit version of Green Hill Zone. It was slower than normal, colors washed out, and the music. It wasn't music. It was a distorted hum, like feedback from a speaker that had been left on for decades. I pressed start. Sonic stood at the beginning of the level, but he wasn't him. Or maybe he was, but wrong. His quills hung limp and his eyes seemed hollow. At first I thought it was a glitch. Maybe the cartridge was damaged. But as I played, the world began to shift unnaturally. Rings appeared and disappeared. Platforms stretched into impossible shapes. And Sonic, he moved differently. Sometimes he'd pause mid-run and turn his head, looking straight at me through the screen. I laughed nervously, trying to convince myself I was imagining it. But the feeling didn't go away. Then it started. Small things at first. The music, distorted, slow, like someone replaying a scratched record, would occasionally whisper my name. I paused the game, unplugged it, shook my head, and swore I heard something moving in the room. The lights flickered. My dog, who had been asleep on the couch, bolted out of the room, growling at nothing. I laughed nervously, blaming it on fatigue. I turned the game back on. The screen had changed. Sonic was no longer running through Green Hill. He was standing in a dark, foggy forest. The background was pixelated, shifting, almost alive. Shadows moved between the trees, twisting unnaturally. I tried to turn off the console, but the power button wouldn't respond. Sonic's eyes moved again. They weren't hollow anymore. They were black, watching, and he seemed to smile. I froze. Then the game started, changing on its own. Text appeared on the screen, not in any font I recognized, in messages that weren't there before. "I see you. You shouldn't have bought me. Play with me forever." My hands shook. I tried to eject the cartridge, but it wouldn't come out. The console hummed, vibrating slightly as if it had a heartbeat. And then from the speakers I heard it, a voice. High-pitched, scratchy, repeating my name over and over, overlapping itself until it became a continuous scream. I slammed the console off. The voice stopped. The room went quiet. My heart pounded, but I convinced myself it was a prank or some elaborate glitch. I put the cartridge in a drawer, intending never to touch it again. That night, sleep didn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sonic in that forest, just standing there, staring, smiling. A few days later, I dared to play again. The moment I turned it on, the game loaded a version of my own house. My bedroom, pixel perfect, down to the smallest details. My bed, the posters on the wall, the drawer where I had hidden the cartridge, it was all there. And there was Sonic standing in the corner. I froze, his eyes. They weren't just black, they glowed faintly red. He tilted his head and the text appeared again. "I know where you sleep." I tried to unplug it. The console resisted. The screen flickered and suddenly my bedroom in the game was moving. The door creaked open slowly on the screen, and I realized my own bedroom door was moving the same way in real life. My blood ran cold. I wanted to run to smash the console, but my body refused to obey. Sonic started running towards the camera faster than the game allowed. Then the screen went black. For a moment I thought it was over, but I heard it, a scratchy, whispering laughter coming not from the console but from the corner of the room. I turned slowly. No one was there. But then I felt it, a weight pressing down behind me, heavy, inhuman. I ran out of my room, down the stairs, out the door. The cartridge stayed inside, somehow still powered, screen flickering faintly in the darkness. I thought I had escaped. I left it in the yard the next day, far from my house. I convinced myself it was gone. That night, though, I heard it. Faint at first, then louder. The hum of that distorted Green Hill Zone theme, combined with that same voice. My name, my real name, whispered. From my closet. I never went back to that house. I don't play games anymore. But sometimes when I'm alone in a dark room, I swear I hear the soft scratch of tiny feet running and the faintest glimpse of red eyes in the corner of my vision. And deep down I know, it wasn't the game that was haunted. It was me. It all started on a quiet evening when I was alone in my room, playing one of the older Sonic games on my console. The house was dark except for the glow of the TV, casting flickering shadows across the walls. I was deep into a speed run trying to beat my own record when I noticed something unusual, a faint reflection in the screen. At first I thought it was my own, distorted by the light, but then I realized the reflection wasn't mine. It was a figure, dark, humanoid, with a shape similar to Sonic, yet wrong. Its quills were jagged, spiking in unnatural directions, and its eyes glowed faintly red, fixed on me. I froze. My hands hovered over the controller, gripping it tightly. I thought it was just a trick of the light, a shadow from the corner of my room. But then it moved, slowly, smoothly, and my blood ran cold. The figure disappeared when I blinked, only to reappear a moment later, closer, reflected in the glossy surface of the TV. My heart pounded. I muted the game and leaned forward. Nothing. The room was empty, silent, except for the hum of the console. I shook my head, telling myself I was imagining things, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I turned back to the game. Sonic ran through the level, looping, spinning, collecting rings. But there was a difference now. The background wasn't the bright, cheerful green hill I knew. Trees twisted unnaturally, their shadows stretching toward the screen, reaching out, platforms bent at impossible angles. And sometimes in the corner of the screen, the shadowy figure would appear standing still, staring directly at me through the pixelated world. I tried to ignore it, focusing on the game, but every so often I'd glance up and it would be closer. Always closer. The reflection on the TV became clearer. Jagged quills, glowing eyes, and that smile stretched too wide, wrong in every way. My hands shook on the controller. I wanted to turn off the console, but the buttons wouldn't respond. It was as if the screen itself had a grip on me, holding me there. Then the game glitched. Rings multiplied endlessly, spinning faster than I could see. Platforms flickered in and out of existence. Sonic ran backward, paused midair, and turned to look at me. And then I heard it. Not through the speakers, through my own ears. A whisper, my name, repeated, overlapping like dozens of voices layered into one. I screamed, dropped the controller, but the screen didn't turn off. I noticed movement behind the reflection now, shadows stretching across my room, bending and twisting unnaturally. The temperature dropped. My breath turned visible in the air. I wanted to run, but my legs were frozen. The figure stepped forward in the reflection, but at the same time a faint sound echoed from the room itself. Tiny claws scratching across the floor. Something was in the room. Something real. I forced myself to look behind me. Nothing. But the scratching continued, growing louder, circling around me. I backed into the wall, heart hammering, and the reflection on the TV shifted. Sonic wasn't running anymore. He stood at the edge of the screen, staring at me with those impossibly red eyes, and the shadow behind him moved independently, slithering, growing, reaching through the screen, as if trying to escape into my world. I grabbed a flashlight, shining it across the room, and the shadows retreated, but only slightly. The screen flickered violently, and then it changed completely. The room inside the game mirrored mine, my bed, my posters, my desk. And there it was, the shadowy figure now inside my virtual room, staring directly at me. Text appeared at the bottom of the screen. I see you. You can't hide. I ran from my chair, pulling the console's plug. The screen went black. Silence. But when I turned, I caught movement in the corner of my eye. The shadow was there in the corner of my room, elongated, humanoid, but wrong. Quills sticking out like spikes, Glowing eyes locked onto me. It didn't move, didn't need to. Its presence alone pressed on me, suffocating. I fled the room, ran to the front door, and looked back. The shadow wasn't following me physically, but I felt it in my mind, in my bones. I knew somehow it was still in the house. I left the lights on that night, sleeping on the couch, afraid to look into my bedroom. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of the lights made my blood run cold. Over the next days, I tried to convince myself it had been a hallucination, a trick of the mind. But then small things started happening. My game consoles would turn on by themselves. Screens would flicker, showing Sonic running through twisted landscapes with that same shadow behind him. My reflection in mirrors would sometimes lag, like it was being delayed, and for a brief moment, I'd see the red eyes behind mine watching, smiling. I attempted to throw away all my old Sonic games, unplug every console, but it didn't matter. The presence followed me. I saw him in dark corners, in reflections, even in photographs I had taken earlier. That smile, too wide, too wrong, haunted me. I began avoiding my own house, sleeping in friends' places, hoping distance would help. But it didn't. I began receiving messages on my computer, my phone, sometimes in my handwriting, sometimes in pure static. I'm still here. One night, desperate, I tried to confront it. I sat in the dark, lights off, console on. The shadow appeared instantly, moving across the room faster than light until it hovered over me. I could feel its presence inside my skull, probing, watching. It whispered again, "You can't leave. You can't escape. You're mine." I screamed, threw the console across the room. It shattered. The shadow didn't move. It lingered, a dark stain in the corner, watching. I left town after that. Changed my name, my house, my routines. I thought leaving would be enough, but it wasn't. Months later, I got a package. No return address. Inside, a small gray cartridge. The label was scratched off, but the shape was unmistakable. I tried to throw it away, but it returned the next day, then the next. Every screen I looked at, phone, TV, laptop, glitched for a split second, and for a heartbeat I saw those red eyes. I live now in constant fear. I don't play games. I don't watch TV. I don't touch anything digital. But at night, when I close my eyes, I see him. Sonic's shape, corrupted, twisted, smiling, red eyes boring into mine. And I know that no matter what I do, it's still there, waiting, patient, and unrelenting. I can feel it in the silence, in the static, in every shadow. I've learned one thing. Some games aren't meant to be played, and some shadows follow you forever.